What happens when Margot Robbie, America's sweetheart with the steel spine Hollywood rarely sees, sits across from Joy Behar on live television, and the one question Joy should never have asked slips out of her mouth? The morning began like any other episode of The View, with the audience buzzing, cameras humming, and Joy Behar already warming the room with that familiar mix of sarcasm and charm. But beneath the surface, something felt charged. A kind of quiet electricity, the kind that warns you a storm is coming long before you hear thunder. Margot Robbie entered the studio glowing, effortlessly elegant, smiling wide, waving to fans in the audience who shouted her name like she was a rock star. She took her seat, crossing one leg over the other, settling into the chair beside Whoopi. She looked ready for the usual light-hearted conversation. Promotion. Laughs. The normal press cycle dance. But Joy was studying her like she already knew she was about to strike a nerve. The interview started smoothly. Sunny asked about Margot's latest film. Whoopi joked about her being too perfect, and the audience chuckled along. Margot laughed, relaxed, letting her shoulders drop as the conversation eased into rhythm. Then Joy leaned forward, the smile on her face small, sharp, knowing. "So, Margot," she said, her tone innocent but her eyes anything but. "There's been a lot of talk about you carrying the entire movie industry this past year. Some might say you're overrated. What do you say to that?" The studio froze. You could feel the silence hit the floor like a dropped glass. Margot blinked, taken completely off guard. A few audience members gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Margot swallowed, lifting her chin. "Well, I think people underestimate how much work goes into." Joy cut her off. "No, I mean honestly. Do you think people praise you too much? You're everywhere. You're in everything. Doesn't that get inflated?" Sunny shot Joy a quick warning look, and Whoopi raised her eyebrows like even she didn't see that one coming. Margot paused, her breath catching in her chest. "I don't really see it that way," she said carefully. "I'm grateful for the opportunities." Joy interrupted again. "Opportunities or favoritism?" A ripple of shocked murmurs moved through the studio audience. Margot's expression changed, just slightly, but enough. Her smile faltered. Her eyes hardened, like someone had reached into her ribcage and pressed against a bruise. You could almost hear her heartbeat shift, her pulse rising, every muscle in her shoulders tightening. She tried to steady her voice. "Joy, are you saying I don't deserve my career?" Joy shrugged. "I'm just asking what everybody else is thinking." That line hung in the air like smoke. Whoopi leaned forward. "Joy, come on now." But Joy didn't stop. She leaned back, crossing her arms, a look of amused challenge on her face. "Look, you've had an amazing run. But some people think Hollywood crowns its golden girls too fast. And I'm wondering how you feel about being treated like the industry's chosen one." It wasn't a question, it was a provocation. Margot's eyes dropped for a moment, then lifted again, steadier. She took a breath. You could see her wrestling with 1,000 thoughts at once, hurt, anger, confusion, disbelief. And beneath all of it, something firmer, resolve. "I've worked very hard," she said slowly. "I've taken risks, I've pushed myself, and I've earned." Joy laughed. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, humorless, slicing through Margot's words like a blade. Margot froze. The audience froze. Sunny closed her eyes like she could already see where this was heading. "What's funny?" Margot asked quietly. Joy tapped the card in her hand. "It's just interesting hearing actors talk about earning things. You're talented, Margot, no one doubts that. But there's a difference between talent and hype. And right now, you're hype." Margot's jaw tensed. Her fingers tightened on her armrest. Her breath shook, not dramatically, but enough that the microphone caught the faintest tremor. "Joy," she said softly, "I don't appreciate being belittled on national television." The room held its breath. Joy blinked once, surprised by the sudden steel in Margot's tone. "Belittled? I'm asking honest questions." "No," Margot replied, her voice warming with emotion. "You're making assumptions about my value, my work, and my integrity." Whoopi nodded slowly. "She's right, Joy. You're pushing a little hard." But Joy only smiled, that familiar mischievous curve of her lips. "Look, Margot can handle tough questions. She's a big girl." Margot inhaled sharply. Something changed. It was visible, like a shift in lighting, the air tightening around her. Her eyes flickered with something rawer, more human. Pain. Frustration. A line crossed, not by accident but intention. "Being a big girl doesn't mean I should accept disrespect," she said. I came here to talk about my work, not to defend my existence. A chorus of quiet woo rose from the audience. Joy raised her eyebrows again, almost amused. So you feel attacked? Margot stared at her. Wouldn't you? And that was the moment, the exact second, when you could feel the entire studio shift. Like everyone watching suddenly understood that this was no longer an interview. This was a confrontation. Whoopi tried to step in. Okay, let's. But Margot leaned back, folding her arms, not breaking eye contact with Joy. Her voice tightened, trembling just slightly, revealing the human beneath the Hollywood polish. You know, she said, women in this industry already get told they are too much, too lucky, too loud, too everything. I deal with that every day. But hearing it from you, another woman, on national TV, it's disappointing. That hit harder than anyone expected. Joy's smile slipped. She opened her mouth, but Margot wasn't finished. I've admired you for years, she continued, her voice low, steady. But if your idea of journalism is tearing down other women to make a point, then maybe the industry isn't as broken as the people questioning it. The audience erupted, not cheering, but gasping, murmuring, shifting forward in their seats like they were witnessing a plot twist unfolding in real time. Joy's face stiffened. Sunny stared at the table. Whoopi muttered, Lord have mercy. And Margot, breathing deeply, her chest rising and falling like she was trying not to shake, knew she had said something she couldn't take back. But what she didn't know yet, what no one knew, was that this tension was only the beginning. Something far more explosive was about to unfold. Something that would not only jolt the studio but lead to the moment that would leave millions stunned across social media. The studio felt like it was holding its breath, as if every light, every camera, every person in the audience knew they were watching something they weren't supposed to see. Something raw, unfiltered, and dangerously real. Margot's words still hung in the air, vibrating like a struck wire, and for a long moment nobody said a thing. Then Joy inhaled sharply, sat up straighter, and forced a thin smile. Well, she said, her voice dropping into that trademark sarcastic lilt. I didn't know we were here to trade speeches. The audience murmured again, some stunned, some uncomfortable, some clearly invested in every second of what felt less like a talk show and more like a live-fire emotional battleground. Margot didn't smile back. She didn't move. Her eyes remained locked on Joy, unflinching. We're here to talk, she said. But I'm not going to pretend everything's fine after you imply I'm some kind of manufactured celebrity. Sunny raised a hand gently, trying to intervene. Let's just reset for a second. Margot, we appreciate you being here. But Joy sliced through Sunny's attempt like a razor. Sunny, it's fine. Margot's upset. She's entitled to that. But this is The View, not a red carpet fluff piece. Margot's jaw tightened. You're right, she replied. This show is supposed to be about conversation, not humiliation. Joy laughed again, louder this time, leaning back in her chair as if the absurdity of Margot's reaction was entertaining to her. The sound echoed through the studio, sharp, condescending. A spark flicked into dry grass. Oh, come on, Joy said dismissively. Humiliation? Please. This is nothing compared to the real world. People criticize actors all the time. You can't crumble every time you hear something you don't like. Margot's eyes widened, not in shock, but in something deeper, something that sliced through her composure. Hurt, pain, disappointment. Her voice dropped into a tone that was quieter than before, but edged with steel. I'm not crumbling, Joy, she said. I'm standing up for myself. A ripple of applause stirred through the audience, uncertain, small at first, then growing a little stronger as people realized what they were supporting. It wasn't about celebrity. It was about dignity. Joy's expression turned cold. Oh, so now you're some kind of feminist icon because you didn't like a tough question. Whoopi finally lifted her hands like she was breaking up a schoolyard fight. Joy, we're not doing this, she said firmly. But Joy wasn't listening. Or maybe she was listening, just not to the voices telling her to stop. Maybe she was listening to the energy in the room, the tension she herself had created, and she was leaning into it. Margot tilted her head slightly. A tough question is one thing, she said. Undermining someone's worth is another. Worth? Joy scoffed. Margot, people think you're good because you're pretty. You know that, right? Nobody's lining up to call you the next Meryl Streep. The audience collectively gasped, loud, sharp, alive. Margot's face froze. Not a flinch, not a blink. Just stillness, a stillness that spoke louder than shouting ever could. Her eyes glistened, just faintly, but she didn't look away. Sunny sat back in her chair, completely shaken. Joy, seriously, what are you doing? She whispered. Joy shrugged as if it were obvious. I'm telling the truth. Isn't that what we do on this show? Whoopi muttered under her breath. We're supposed to. The air tightened again, pulsing, heavy with unspoken things. Margot breathed in slowly, like someone trying to collect fractured pieces of themselves before they shattered. I didn't come here for this, she said softly, her voice trembling at the edges. Not to be judged by my face or compared to someone else's legacy. Joy rolled her eyes. Then maybe you shouldn't be in Hollywood. That was it. The final strike. The audience erupted, not in applause, but in a roar of disbelief. People shifted in their seats, whispering urgently, eyes darting between Joy and Margot like they were watching a scene unfold they would later tell everyone about. Margot sat forward for the first time, her hands clasped tightly together. Do you hear yourself? She asked, her voice trembling with a powerful blend of fury and heartbreak. You're reducing my entire career to a stereotype you know is harmful. Joy folded her arms. I'm reducing it to reality. No, Margot shot back. You're reducing it to cruelty. That line landed like a physical blow. Joy blinked, thrown off by the force of Margot's certainty. She opened her mouth, but this time the words didn't come easily. Her bravado wavered. Margot wasn't done. You think I haven't fought for every role, she continued. Every audition. Every director who thought I was just a blonde face. You think I haven't earned the respect I've gotten. Joy didn't answer. Sunny leaned forward, her voice soft but urgent. Margot, you don't have to explain yourself to her. But Margot wasn't explaining. She was reclaiming. I've been doubted my entire life, she said. By critics, by peers, and yes, by people like you, Joy. People who think success must be luck, or favoritism, or some unearned privilege. But do you know how hard I've worked? Do you know the nights I've stayed awake studying my lines, terrified of disappointing everyone around me? Or the roles I've taken that people mocked, only for those same people to praise me later? The audience listened in stunned silence. Joy swallowed, her expression shifting. For the first time, something like discomfort flickered through her eyes. Margot's voice softened, but it didn't lose its edge. You don't get to decide my worth, she said. And you definitely don't get to laugh at me for defending it. The applause that followed wasn't scattered this time. It was thunderous, rising in waves across the studio. People stood up. A few shouted yes. A few clapped with the fierce energy of someone witnessing justice unfold. But Joy didn't clap. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She leaned back in her chair, expression tight, jaw locked, eyes narrowed, not in confidence, but in something more complicated. Wounded pride. Embarrassment. A sense that she had lost control of the moment she thought she commanded. Whoopi exhaled. All right, let's take a breath, she said gently. Everybody breathe. But Margot wasn't breathing normally anymore. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. Her eyes glistened even more. Her voice broke, just slightly, when she said, I think I need a moment. And that moment, the crack in her voice, the tremor in her hands, told the entire room that this clash was far from over. The studio air felt thick, like everyone was inhaling the same collective shock and nobody knew when they would exhale again. Margot's voice had cracked just enough to reveal the raw human beneath the polished Hollywood glow, and that vulnerability hit the room like a tremor, shaking something deep and unsteady. Whoopi tried to break the tension with a soft, steady tone. Let's all take a second. But the second never came. Margot stood up. Slowly. Quietly. Like someone rising after being pushed one time too many. Her chair scraped against the studio floor, a small sound, but in the silence, it cut through the air like a scream. The audience stiffened, eyes widening as they watched her smoothing her dress, her hands trembling despite her attempt to hide it. Her breath wavered, chest rising and falling too quickly. Joy watched her stand, and something in her expression flickered. Surprise? Defiance? Guilt? No one could tell. But she lifted her chin, stubborn, refusing to look away. Margot finally spoke, her voice soft but razor-clear. I'm not going to sit here while you belittle me. Joy scoffed, but it was weaker than before. I wasn't belittling you. Joy, Margot said firmly, you were. The audience hummed with tension, like the sound of a storm building. Sunny leaned toward Margot, her voice gentle. Are you okay? Margot didn't answer immediately. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. I came here to talk about my film, she said, her voice trembling but strong. And instead, I've been mocked, questioned, laughed at. Joy rolled her eyes. It was a joke. No, Margot cut in sharply. It was disrespect. Whoopi stepped in again, more urgently this time. Okay, let's reset. Everyone calm down, please. But Margot wasn't calming down. Not because she was out of control, but because something inside her had snapped into clarity. She wasn't angry. She was done. Margot looked directly at Joy, pain flashing behind her eyes. You know, Joy, I grew up watching you. I admired how bold you were, how fearless. But I never imagined being on the other end of that boldness would feel like this. Joy swallowed, her jaw tightening. You're being dramatic. Margot let out a short, breathy laugh. One that wasn't amused, one that carried disbelief and disappointment. I'm an actor. Drama is my job. But this, she gestured around the studio. This is just sad. The audience reacted with a scattered gasp, a mix of sympathy and shock. Joy sat forward. Margot, you're overreacting. Margot blinked, slow, steady, controlled. No, I'm reacting exactly as a human being reacts when they're humiliated on national television. The word humiliated sent another shiver through the room. Sunny looked down at her hands, clearly shaken. Whoopi closed her eyes like she could feel the temperature in the studio dropping. Joy pressed her lips together, then tried to smile again, but it faltered mid-curve. I'm just doing my job. Asking tough questions. Margot lifted her chin. You weren't asking questions. You were taking shots. The audience applauded softly, supportive, but cautious, as if even they understood how fragile the moment was. Margot put a hand on the table, steadying herself. I've worked my entire life for my career, she said. And you reduced it to my face. My looks. Something I can't control. Something I shouldn't have to apologize for. Joy opened her mouth, but Sunny spoke first, her voice low. Joy, maybe you crossed a line. Joy turned to her sharply. I'm not the villain here. Margot let out another soft breath. I don't think you're a villain, she said quietly. I think you're someone who forgot what it's like to be on the other side. Joy's shoulders twitched, almost imperceptibly, but enough to show that the comment had hit deeper than she wanted it to. Whoopi finally put a firm hand on the table. All right, let's just. But Margot wasn't done. Her voice steadied, her breathing slowed, and a kind of calm washed over her. Not peace, but certainty. A final decision forming in the space between her heartbeat and her pride. You know what? She said softly. I don't have to stay for this. That sentence cracked through the studio like lightning. The audience gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others leaned forward as if afraid to miss a single second. Joy sat back, stunned. You're leaving? Seriously? Margot nodded. Yes, seriously. Joy laughed again, but it wobbled this time. Because of one question. Margot shook her head. Because of how you treated me after the question. The silence that followed was heavy, like the quiet that falls after someone slams a door. Margot took a step back from the table, her heels clicking softly on the stage floor. But even that small sound felt monumental. Each step she took was a statement, a boundary, a reclaiming of herself. Sunny reached out, lightly touching her arm. Margot, you don't have to go. But Margot turned to her with a small, grateful, exhausted smile. I do. For my own self-respect. Something about that line made the audience erupt in applause, loud, emotional, supportive. Not cheering the drama, but the strength it took to say it. Joy's face flushed red. You're really walking off. On live TV. Margot looked back at her, eyes steady, no longer shaking. If walking away from disrespect is unprofessional, then maybe professionalism isn't what people think it is. Whoopi tried again, gentler this time. Margot, hold on. We can cut to break. But Margot stepped back again, toward the edge of the set. Her voice softened at the edges, but held like polished glass. I don't want a break. I want peace. That line settled over the studio like dust. Joy opened her mouth as if to respond, but the words never came, not because she didn't have any, but because for the first time, she looked unsure of them. Margot took a deep breath, blinked once, then turned, and began walking toward the backstage exit. The audience murmured, whispers rippling like waves. She's leaving. Oh my God. I've never seen this. What did Joy expect? The cameras tried desperately to follow her without losing the hosts, the panel, the chaos unraveling on the live feed. Producers behind the scenes waved frantically, unsure whether to cut to commercial or lean into the moment that was already exploding across the entire studio. Joy stared at Margot's back, something between regret and stubborn anger flickering behind her eyes. She muttered under her breath, "Unbelievable." Margot didn't turn around. But just before she disappeared behind the curtain, she stopped, only for a moment, only long enough to breathe in deeply. The audience leaned in, holding on to that final second, knowing instinctively that whatever she did next would define the moment forever. Margot's shoulders rose, then fell. Then she walked off the set, and the room erupted. Not applause, not boos, just stunned, electric, chaotic energy, like the air itself didn't know how to react. A walk-off. Live. Unscripted. Real. And the fallout was only just beginning. The moment Margot slipped behind the curtain, the entire studio seemed to collapse inward, like the room had been held together by her presence and now everything was falling apart without it. The applause sign flickered, unsure whether to urge the audience to clap or stay silent. Even the cameras hesitated, their red lights blinking, confused about where to point. Whoopi let out a long breath she'd clearly been holding. "All right, okay, folks, we're gonna." But the audience wasn't listening. People were turning to each other, whispering frantically. She really walked off. I've never seen anything like that. Joy pushed too far this time. Producers are gonna lose their minds. Joy sat completely still, staring at the place where Margot had vanished. Her hand was clenched so tightly around her note cards the edges had curled. She looked like she couldn't decide whether she was angry, embarrassed, or stunned. Sunny leaned away from Joy, rubbing her forehead. "Oh my God. Joy, what happened?" Joy swallowed. "I didn't do anything wrong." She overreacted. The audience audibly groaned. A few people shook their heads. Someone in the back shouted, "Own it, Joy." Joy's eyes snapped in that direction, but she didn't respond. Whoopi glanced toward the control booth where producers were waving their arms in pure panic. "We're supposed to cut to commercial, but, looks like we're staying live for a second." The tension sank deeper, thick, uncomfortable, riveting. The kind of moment the network wished they could bury, but millions were already witnessing it. Sunny leaned forward, voice gentle but firm. "Joy, you went too far." Joy's eyes widened. "I was doing my job." Sunny didn't flinch. "No, you weren't. You were trying to get a reaction. And you got one you weren't prepared for." Joy opened her mouth again, but the words tangled in her throat. I wasn't trying to hurt her." "But you did," Sunny said softly. "Everyone saw it." The audience murmured in agreement. For the first time since the clash began, Joy looked away, down at the table, her eyes blinking faster than usual. A crack of vulnerability flashed across her face, but she pushed it away just as quickly. The cameras cut to Whoopi, who seemed to be trying to hold the show together with sheer willpower. "All right, folks, emotions are high. Things got heated. But this is a human moment. Let's take a breath." But there was no breath to take, because backstage, just beyond the curtain, Margot Robbie stood with her hands pressed to her face, breathing in short, shaking bursts. Her makeup artist hovered, unsure whether to comfort her or give her space. "I'm fine," Margot whispered, though her voice cracked. I needed to get out of there." A producer hurried over, headset bouncing around his neck. "Margot, we're so sorry, we didn't expect." Margot shook her head. "It wasn't your fault." She wiped her eyes, taking another deep breath. "I won't go back out there." "You don't have to," the producer assured her. "We'll handle it." But Margot wasn't thinking about the show anymore. She was thinking about how she felt, small, exposed, belittled in front of millions. And that hurt more than anything Joy had said. Another producer approached carefully. "Margot, do you want to make a statement afterward? Online. We can help." Margot closed her eyes. "Let me breathe first." Meanwhile, back on stage, Whoopi finally straightened her posture, placing both hands on the table like she was reclaiming control. "We're going to talk about what happened. Respectfully." Joy let out a humorless laugh. "Respectfully. Sure." Sunny shot her a warning glare. "Joy." Joy exhaled, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Look, I didn't think she'd take it that hard." "And that's the issue," Sunny replied. "You weren't thinking about how your words would land. You were thinking about the moment. The sound bite. Joy stared at her, stunned. You're siding with her. Sunny shook her head. I'm siding with compassion. The audience reacted again, applause this time. Real, supportive, loud. Joy's expression crumpled, hurt, defensive, frustrated all at once. Then Whoopi delivered the line that cleaved the whole moment open. Joy, sometimes honesty isn't bravery. Sometimes it's cruelty in disguise. Joy froze. The audience fell silent. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer. Joy's mouth opened slightly, but she didn't speak. Her eyes drifted downward, her jaw tightening as though she was holding something back, anger or shame, no one knew. Sunny placed a hand gently over Joy's. No one thinks you're a bad person, she whispered. But you hurt someone today. Joy swallowed hard. I didn't mean to. But you did, Sunny repeated softly. And that was when Joy's face changed, not theatrically, not dramatically, but quietly, subtly, as if something inside her had finally recognized the truth. On the other side of the curtain, Margot wiped her cheeks, steadier now. I shouldn't have cried, she murmured. Her makeup artist shook her head. Crying doesn't make you weak. Margot looked toward the stage entrance, toward the voices echoing faintly, toward the audience she could still hear reacting. I just never thought I'd be spoken to like that. By another woman. On TV. The makeup artist squeezed her hand. Everyone saw what happened. You were strong. Margot didn't respond, but the gratitude in her eyes said enough. Inside the studio, the show struggled onward, limping through the aftermath. Whoopi finally signaled to the control booth. Okay, now we're cutting to commercial. The lights dimmed. The applause sign blinked off. The audience finally let out the breath they'd been holding. But the story wasn't ending. Social media was already on fire. Clips spreading like wildfire. Margot Robbie walks off the View. Joy Behar crosses the line again. Live television chaos. What just happened? Fans defended Margot. Critics defended Joy. The debate exploded. Messy, emotional, unstoppable. By the time Margot exited the studio quietly, shielded by her team, paparazzi were already waiting outside. Flashbulbs erupted like fireworks. Margot, did Joy insult you? Are you upset? Will you come back to the View? Margot didn't answer. She just got into her car, closed the door, and exhaled a long, exhausted breath. Back inside, Joy remained in her chair long after the show ended. The set emptied, lights cooling, cameras shutting off one by one. She stared at the empty seat where Margot had sat just an hour earlier. Sunny approached her quietly. You okay? Joy didn't look up. I didn't want to hurt her. Sunny nodded. Then maybe, next time, think before you swing. Joy's throat tightened. Yeah, maybe. Outside, Margot's car pulled away into the late afternoon light, leaving behind a building buzzing with aftermath, debate, and shockwaves that would ripple online for days. And somewhere between the cameras cooling and Twitter igniting, a simple truth lingered. Words have weight. And sometimes, they break hearts before they spark headlines. If you felt the intensity of this confrontation, let me know in the comments what you think Joy should have done differently. And if you want more explosive, emotional, cinematic breakdowns like this one, make sure you hit subscribe to Talk Narrative right now.